Hi, I'm Naomi Eklund. So here are a few things to know about Enneagram Lingo. The numbers are used to neutralize judgment on a style name. Now, we have named all of the styles, but numbers 1 through 9 are all important. They're all equally important. They're valuable. We can't live without any one of them. And even though we have assigned qualities and we use them to understand, the whole reason that we go with the numbers as the primary way to refer to people is because it is not supposed to be judgmental. We are supposed to be kind and compassionate. And when we use the Enneagram, one of the first things we're supposed to do is recognize the value of every single person that we work with and our differences, our strengths. Levels of development, thriving to surviving. We all understand that survival mode is where we experience the most triggers and the most fears. That is where we feel like we don't have hope, maybe where we feel impoverished. Thriving, that's what we all think we want. That's where we all want to go. We want to, have money, have freedom, have movement, have empowerment. The thing is that to move from survival to thriving, it does take effort, it takes consciousness, and it means that we have to put some energy into our own mental, physical, emotional health and spiritual health. And it is important for all of us to know that each day we can go through a cycle of these things more than once. So your style, that is the number that your personality is assigned. And if you're in doubt, the biggest thing for you to look at is what is your underlying need or motivation? And we talk about that in all of these videos. So this is one of the reasons why I made the course, because if you can understand what motivates you and motivates the people around you, so much good can come of that. You also have to start with yourself. You have to ask yourself, what is my main motivation? Because we often think that what motivates us is different because it was what we were taught to be motivated by instead of what we're really motivated by. So in the Enneagram, you're going to hear the term centers, and this means head, heart, body. This can also be referred to as thinkers, feelers, or gut. This might also be referred to as people who are anxious, people who are emotional, or people who are angry. These are ways that people have identified these centers. Think of it in the simplest possible term. To know your center, pay attention to where you have the first response or reaction to a thing in the world. So if your natural response is that energy comes up from your gut, you're probably in that center. If you automatically want to cry, or if you automatically go into anxiety, those are clues about your type. These are also clues that you can pay attention to when you're working with other people's, because people often have tells, and you, by watching them or asking them, can pay a great deal of attention. And as you learn more about the system, then you will have more information so that you can make a more compassionate, more effective communication with that person. Survival instincts. Now, these are, because to me, that is a more precise types. I'm not going to argue semantics. I don't call them subtypes. I call them instinctual variants, definition of what they are. Now, each personality type, each person has a personality type, and they have a survival instinct. Personally, I think that our survival instinct is even more inherent than our personality. I think our personality is more nature and nurture, whereas our survival instincts seem pretty predetermined. That doesn't mean they can't be influenced, but they're pretty predetermined. So we have the social, the one-on-one, and the self-preserving. Now, the one-on-one you might also see described as sexual, charming, etc. I use one-on-one because I like to keep this as user-friendly as possible. So the social, and by the way, we all have all of these. It is simply a matter of which one do we use first, and by understanding what order we use them in, we might recognize that there's something that we need to develop to make ourselves function better in the world. So if we start with social, and if you're a social person, you're the person who loves walking into a room, you love walking into a party, you think about the we first. This is the person who's like, well, are we all in this together? How are we going to do this? And what they mean is, as a group, how are we functioning? And since every single personality type has all of the instincts, a social 1 and a social 7 or a social 5 and a social 8 are going to look different. A social 1 is going to think about how can we reform everything. A social 8 is going to think about how can we make this matter, which is why the 8 moves into leadership. A social 2 is going to be the team cheerleader, whereas a social 5 is going to think about how do I take what I'm learning and influence and make the world a better place with it, because we're all in this together. The one-on-one person, this is somebody who really needs to have the other person around them. And the self-preserving is the person who wants to make sure that they're taken care of first. So a way you might look at this, and I think I have to credit Dale Rhodes for this, although I don't know that he created it. So a social person walks into a party and they're the life of the party. They're having a great time, they're laughing, everybody's their friend. The one-on-one person walks into the party and they're kind of scoping it out, saying, okay, where is there a couple of seats where I can grab one of my friends and go talk? And the one-on-one person, the self-preserving person, is kind of sitting in the corner looking around going, where's the food? Where's the windows? Where's the doors? How soon can I get out of here? And are there any skeevy people that I have to pay attention to? And we'll talk more about those as we go, because it is important to know. And let's say you're a manager. If you only have one thing you have time to learn, I'm going to say understanding if somebody is a social, a one-on-one, or a self-pres is probably the singular most important thing, because if you can understand that, you can work and speak to their most basic structural way of being in the world. Introvert, extrovert, and ambivert. I am going to ask you to never say to me an introverted extrovert or an extroverted introvert, because this is just not accurate. Now, ambivert, we are all to some degree both introverted and extroverted. That is normal. Everything in human beings are on some kind of scale. We are not black and white. An introverted person, number one, gains energy not only by time on their own, but they need to not hear others so they can process information. An extrovert needs to hear themselves think. Just in case you were wondering, I'm an extrovert. And it is 100% true. We need to hear ourselves think. We need to ask questions. I can walk into a store. I can be there like 20 times before. Walk into a store and not know where something is. Look at a total stranger and say, do you know where X is? And before they've even answered, because I have heard myself think, I know exactly where to go and I can say thank you. Introverts, on the other hand, need time on their own to think things through, to feel things through. These are both wonderful ways of being, but they're very, very different. So we need to pay attention and have respect for both of those ways. One of the things about the introvert is that introverts can be very social. And this is where you get the idea that somebody might be a social that they might be an extroverted introvert. They're probably a social introvert, which means that they actually genuinely like people. I first really noticed this. I had this friend. She's the cutest thing, because about 1 hour and 50 minutes in, she started, by 2 hours of socializing, her battery's gone. Doesn't have it. Me, on the other hand, I can go to a trade show and it takes me 3 hours to unwind at the end of the day because my battery is so charged up from all of that human interaction. The introvert needs to think to get to their answer. So you can be a self-preserving extrovert, which means you are probably less social. That doesn't mean that you don't need to talk. You might find yourself I know for me, when I was in a very self-preserving mode, I was going through a divorce, I found myself talking to my dog a lot. God bless him. He was the best dog ever. He listened. I could talk, and I didn't need to go socialize. Wings. Now, when you talk to people who talk Enneagram, you will almost always hear someone refer to wings. Now, the fact is that we all have two wings. When you hear somebody say, I'm this type with this wing, what that means is that they use one wing more than the other. Now, our wings are amazing because wings help us fly. Wings help us function in the world. We want to understand not only our main type, but we want to understand our wings, because it is in understanding our wings that we can help round ourselves out. So welcome you to know more about your wings. And oftentimes you will see people function in the world through their wings because one wing might work better in the world than the other. Arrows. We all have arrows. Now, I've been in the Enneagram world a really long time. And as with anything else, philosophies change. When I was learning the Enneagram, there was a stress and an integration point on both of your arrows. Well, they kind of changed that because they realized that you can draw on your arrows for a lot of things. And it doesn't necessarily mean stressed or not stressed. So when we talk about arrows, what this means is these are other qualities that you tend to have that you use sometimes in different ways. For example, as an 8, it is actually true for me that I love using my 5. I love using my intellectual, but if I use too much of my intellectual, it does actually get stressful. Like if I have to get too deeply into something, it can get really overwhelming because as an 8 who is social, who is an extrovert, I also have a real tendency toward the bigger picture. When I start to get too granular, it can get really stressful for me. And so that's something to think about. And as we talk about arrows, you will notice that different arrows are places where you can get strength. And they can also give you clues about yourself. If I'm finding myself getting way spun out about a piece of information, I'm probably more stressed than I realize. And understanding where my arrows are helps me to sort of say, okay, I need to give myself some space from this because I'm really overworking myself in an area that is naturally stressful for me. So then if we talk about the tri-type, which I did briefly before, I think that there is definitely something to this. And however, we are not talking about that here. Having a good, solid understanding of the Enneagram, if you want to go learn more about tri-type, great. That is its whole own world. But either way, having a great understanding of the Enneagram will help you. Now, subtypes, these are used differently. Like I said, some people refer to your survival instincts as subtypes. Some people refer to your tri-types as subtypes. And there's also this idea of counterphobia. So when you're in the Enneagram world, when you're out there reading things and people talk about things, give yourself a minute and step back from it and try to really parse out what it is they're referring to, because the terminology is not used completely universally. So give yourself a break there. So my name is Naomi Eklund, and we have a wonderful class on the Enneagram. It has hours worth of content, questions and answers. I wrote a book called Building Bridges Through Personality. I have 23 years of work with the topic, including a lot of work in businesses. Jen, who is the other coach that works with me here at Infinite Yes, she has multiple certifications in the Enneagram as well as other coaching modalities. So would really think that you'd benefit a lot from learning about the Enneagram because it gives you so much power in the world. So go and check out our membership. A lot of really good stuff there for you. And it will give you some tools to make your life better and easier. Thanks.